the defenses. There are one or two defenses that are more in the conscious realm, but like, we're not going to go down all those paths or we go nuts tonight. We've got to stick on the main path. Basically, denial is the key issue. We just don't see it. So in every one of these little junctures, not only are we dealing with the symbolization, the displacement, the binding of feelings, the associative connections between things, we are dealing with denial. Now, I imagine that most of you probably have German as a first language, and so you may not know a kind of fun saying that exists in psychotherapy in North America. And the saying is, denial is not just a river in Egypt. Does anybody get that? Yeah. So, I'm bringing our culture across here one way or another. Okay. Oh, does someone want to translate that?
I could do it.
Go ahead.
Well, Denial heißt Abwehrmechanismus und Denial heißt der Nil. Also der Nil ist nicht nur ein Fluss in Ägypten.
So denial
is not only
it's not just a river in Egypt. That's right. It's also a mental mechanism. So we have denial as a very important part, of this process. And what I like to say is that every one of these displacement symbolization junctures, it's funny, every once in a while I just go blank. I like to call them yes-no gates. Yes, I can let this in, I can see this. Or no, I don't want to know about it. And the interesting thing is that before people will come into therapy, enough of these yes-no gates have to swing over to yes in order for people to say, wow, there's something wrong with me. I really need to look at it, work my way through it. And if someone hasn't had that swing over, if the preponderance of balance is not toward the yes side, you can talk at people till you're blue in the face. You can force them into therapy through the courts, but the basic part of them is not open, and therapy, as I know it, simply doesn't work. So, to keep this wobbly structure functioning, we have denial at all of those places. We need continuous validation, and we need input. Do you remember earlier on I was saying that to build this thing here, this personality structure, we have to have information coming in. And that sounds pretty straightforward and obvious. But in a little while, it's going to become very, very important. All right. So, we have then 3 things that occur in all clients who want to examine themselves. Number 1, emotional pain, or they wouldn't be there. Number 2, confusion. Confusion. If it's true that nothing up here in our conscious life is really as it is down here, is it any wonder that people are confused? Is it any wonder that people choose the wrong mate, choose the wrong job, do all sorts of things in the course of their lifetime which they simply do not understand? And if you do enough things up here that you don't understand, sooner or later the weight of catastrophe is going to bear down on you until you need a mood-elevating drug, which is what most people turn to, because those yes-no gates are still firmly placed in that no, I don't want to know about this position. And so the pharmaceutical companies make a great deal of money. Okay, so it's hopeless. Someone walks into your office looking for help, but they have all these defenses. So maybe we should just pack up and go home, but we won't. We won't, because in the field of therapy there are some positive factors. And one of the positive factors is what I call the compulsion to know. Most people are caught up in the compulsion to not know. Almost everybody you meet doesn't want to know. They really don't want to know. Try telling somebody something about themselves that they would not, that they don't want to hear, and you will get nowhere. The compulsion to not know. But there is a compulsion to know. When someone comes in to see us, what's working on our side? The fact of the matter is that this is highly inefficient. This guy will be reporting on plays in a caustic and negative manner his whole lifetime, and he'll have little bursts of satisfaction, but he will not solve the problem down here. So personality as we know it, especially in people who've been harmed and damaged, is incredibly conflicted and very, very inefficient. So the more we know, the further we get down the tree, the more efficient our life becomes, the more we are able to say what we need to say, to share what we need to share, to be honest in very difficult circumstances, to be able to say as a man to your lady, I'm scared. Stuff like that, just to be more direct and more efficient. The other interesting thing is that as you become more and more and more honest, you get closer and closer and closer to the ground of your being. There's nowhere to fall to. See, a lot of the fear up here, a lot of the business of needing validation is because when you're up here as a highly displaced, highly symbolized individual, you have a huge stake in maintaining this complexity and in hiding everything down here. But as you get lower and lower on the tree, and you get more and more honest, you're less and less afraid of what we might call a negative cascade. Less and less afraid that this whole thing is going to fall apart. So that if somebody says to me in the audience, well, Paul, do you want us to like you? Yes. Yes, I do. There's nowhere to fall to. I mean, I'll survive if you don't. Of course I will. But conversations become very, very clean. And conversations between husbands and wives, partners, people who really care about each other, starts to take on an entirely different tincture, an entirely different flow. So that when my lady questions me, and she is really good at it, really good at it, I have no choice but to say to her, yes, I am afraid, or yes, I was wrong. That was really a mean and hurtful thing that I just said. And so conversation between mates starts to function at an entirely different level. And marriages maybe don't break up quite so quickly. Quite so quickly. Oh, please, I'm not going there. All right, okay. All right. So, as we get further down the tree, we also reduce body tension. It takes energy to maintain this structure, tremendous and complex energy. People wonder why they're walking around with headaches and muscle aches and this ache and that ache and all the other kinds of things and this disease and that disease. And as we get further down there and more honest in our life, then we get healthier. But the nice thing about it is that it almost becomes an art form to live honestly. To ask yourself, well, what was I feeling when I said that? What was I feeling when I did that? And to begin to move through these deeper channels of feeling gives one a sense of, what is it? A sense of exploration, a sense of safety. The more honest you get, the safer you feel in life. Everything starts to change. I'm going to come back to this a little later, but let me go forward. All right. So let's look at this business of working on ourselves. Remember I said this is going to be an evening of talking to you about how rather than why. And as we look at how, we're going to see some answers to the question why, but nothing like the esoteria that is floating around out there. Just simple things. And I have had some fun naming laws. What could be more powerful than finding a law of human behavior? And the lovely thing about my laws is that they don't always hold true. So I'll tell you what the laws are that underpin feeling-oriented and body-oriented psychotherapy. And you can say to yourself, well, maybe that's true, maybe it isn't. But for those people in whom the yes-no gates have swung them this way toward therapy, these laws really permit the kind of therapy that I'm going to tell you about now. Law number 1. There's some laws in my book, so this is really law number 3, but we'll just take it as law number 1 here. Okay, here we go. Are you ready for this? It's a masterpiece. Here we go. I love this. All right. Here it is. A feeling that is allowed to increase in intensity across time when inwardly studied